old when you talk about wealth experience, etc., etc. Now, I want to apologise up front because my neighbour has just decided that he should mow his lawn. I don't know how many of you have been doing these virtual sessions, but it always happens. It just seems to happen right at this time. I want to thank you so much for inviting me to Toastmasters. I didn't realise it was a competition night, or I would have liked to stay around and try and hear some of it, because I think it is such a great organisation. And I think I probably heard about it for the first time, maybe, now I'm really going to sound old, 25, 30 years ago. I went to my first meeting when I was absolutely petrified about speaking in public and wanted to get a bit better about structuring my thoughts. And it's great to see, what was it, 720 meetings later, we're still going in this group. So thank you very much. Now, my extensive briefing note tonight told me speak only for 5 minutes, Alexis, which is for me a massive challenge. And the second challenge is you said I can speak about myself, and you only gave me 5 minutes. So, you know, this is going to be incredibly stressful for me. But I thought I would talk a bit about my journey, but I'd talk about it in terms of my learnings as a leader and what I've learned about that. And I'm just going to do 6 things. You know, what my learnings are. You have to work hard, so hard work's important. Continuously learn, be resilient, be adaptable, be authentic, and be brave. And let me talk through why I picked those themes as something that makes me who I am today, for good and for bad, by the way. It isn't all good, I can tell you that. And the first one I put there is hard work. And why did I put that? Some of you have probably heard my story before, but I come from a very, very small country town in Australia, in New South Wales, called Bega. Now, Bega is famous for only one thing, cheese. And that's the only thing that comes out of Bega. The whole place revolves around dairy and milk and cheese. And so I was born there. My father was what they call a 10-pound pom. So immigrated to Australia after the Second World War, which I find still amazing to this day, that his whole family just got on a boat and travelled for 6 weeks to somewhere they'd only seen a photo of, but apparently that was the right thing to do. And my mother was the 10th of 11 children of a very big founding family in Bega. So Bega, 3,500 people. I always say half of them my relatives and the other half are married to my relatives. And that is still the case today. I have 52 first cousins, and I think about 38 of them still live in Bega. So it gives you a bit of a understanding of my background. But I always, and my mother instilled this into me, I always wanted to go to university. And as a result of that, I knew I had to work really hard, because I love my parents, they love me, but they didn't have enough money to help me go to university in the big smoke of Sydney, 6 hours drive away. So I really learnt, you know, from my parents and from myself that hard work was really important, and important to get ahead. And, you know, so I went part-time university for the first 2 years and worked full-time. And I think that, you know, I'm sure everyone on this call is very clever, but I mean, I think you do have to work hard. And I don't mean, you know, destroy your work-life balance. That's not what I'm suggesting by any stretch of the imagination, because I think that's important as well. But always do the best you can every single day. And some days that means you don't do much because you're not in great shape that particular day. And that's okay sometimes as well. So that's my very, very first lesson that I've learned, and I try to live by that every day. The next thing for me is about constantly learning. As you can tell, I am no spring chicken, right? You know, but we live in an era today where, you know, we've got every type of social media in existence. We're constantly on every form of video. I've done Zoom, WebEx, Teams, My Meeting, TikTok, blah, 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 blah. It all happens. But I've also lived in an era, I remember when I was at school, Bega High School, a few of us were chosen to look at the very first computer that the school got. And I was one of the selected 3. And we went and looked at this massive machine, and all of us wondered, including the teachers, what on earth are we going to do with this thing? And look where we are today, where you can carry your phone around, has far more computing power of that. But why do I mention that? Because I often hear leaders say to me, especially those who are of my era, say, I don't believe in social media. I'm never going to do that. It's just rubbish. And I say to them, that is rubbish. Because, you know, if you're in ANZ or big corporations, you have the opportunity to use Yammer, you can use LinkedIn, you can use Twitter, and you get instant feedback, which I think is incredibly important to make you a better leader, to make me better at judgment and decision making. It's not always pleasant, by the way. You get the good with the bad, or the bad with the good. But I just think, you know, that's constantly learning, understanding what the expectations of the community are, understanding what the expectations of our customers are. And to do that, I think it's a lot easier to use the tools we have. And I am an avid reader. I love podcasts. I am infatuated with what's going on with machine learning, AI, robots, etc. And I'm always forcing myself to learn about those things. I won't ever be an expert, but at least I know they exist. And my third trait is resilience. You know, as a leader, you cast a very, very long shadow. And, you know, there's been an incredible period of time in the last now 10 months, 11 months of Corona. But before that, we've had other crises like the global financial crisis. And as a leader, quite rightly, you're expected to get up and to paint a picture that there is a way out of this. You know, people always say to me, why don't you look more stressed? And I'm like, well, is it going to help you if I run around like a headless chicken and go, I've got no idea what to do, I don't know what this is. No, that's not going to make you feel any better, is it? And it isn't going to make me feel any better either. So I think it is incredibly important to be resilient. But to do that, you do have to look after yourself physically and mentally. And as you can tell, I am no Olympic athlete, right? So I'm not talking about go to the gym, and you can do that if you so choose. But I think it's just having a bit of time outside or walking or whatever every day. I have 2 dogs. I try to walk them every morning when no one else can annoy me. They annoy me sometimes, but that is my mental and physical start to every day, just to make sure that I'm ready for the challenges of the day and that I'm mentally and physically prepared. And I think that is incredibly important. And I think the other thing, you know, it's very easy. I love work. I love people. It's very easy to get caught up in work and forget those other important relationships that keep you stable and keep you grounded. And making time for them is often hard, but I think incredibly important for your mental, physical well-being and your resilience. And my 4th learning is probably adaptability. And why do I say this? I've had the amazing opportunity to live in London for 3 years. I lived in Prague for 4.5 years in Czech Republic. I lived in Hong Kong for 3 years. I obviously am from Sydney, and I've lived in Adelaide as well. I kind of tack that on after Prague, London and Hong Kong. And I suppose one of the things that formed me in recent years with my 4.5 years in Prague, I went to Prague, probably not fully informed. I dragged my husband, my 2 kids, my 2 dogs, and we jetted off to Czech Republic to live in Prague for 4.5 years. And when I first arrived there, I think they had never seen an Australian be their CEO, and they certainly had never seen an Australian woman be their CEO. So I think they thought someone had arrived from Mars to suddenly manage them through the global financial crisis, because I arrived in June 2008. And so, you know, I remember my very first meeting, and I'll never, ever forget this. And I went into the boardroom, and like any good Australian, I plonked myself down at the board table at the first available seat and proceeded to do what I thought was such an inspiring speech, you know, about my expectations of them and their expectations that they should have of me as a leader. And I went outside and I was thinking, phew, that didn't go so badly. And I sat in my office, and the HR leader came to me, and I'm eternally grateful to her for this. And she said to me, "They think you're a very weak leader." And I'm like, how could they think I'm a weak leader? They know nothing about me. And she said, "Well, you didn't sit at the head of the table. And in Czech Republic, if you don't sit at the head of the table, you're a weak leader." And can I tell you, as an Australian, that every grain fibre of my body said, sit where you want. But I knew it was really important to the people that I sat at the head of the table. And so I sat at that head of the table every meeting after that to the day I left. Is it silly? Yes, but it was important culturally for the people there. And so I think you've got to know your boundaries as a leader. You've got to know, you know, where you're prepared not to step over, but you also have to adapt to your situation. And pretending you can be exactly the same in every environment is just garbage. You can't. Probably the thing, though, that is most important to me is authenticity. And I said it before, I think leaders cast very big shadows, and you don't realise how big until you go to somewhere like Prague, where, you know, I would just be openly talking about something. I'm an extrovert. Stuff comes out of my mouth that I haven't always deeply thought about. And in that country, I would come out of my mouth, and before I knew it, people were trying to implement it. And I didn't want them to implement it. It was just the thought bubble that I was, you know, spitting out. And so you realise as a leader, the shadow you cast is so long. People are watching for the way you act, not just what you say, but the way you behave, the way you act. And if you can't be yourself, then I think it's really hard to be consistent. And I think consistency as a leader is one of the most important traits. Good or bad leader, I would rather know what to expect than not know anywhere what I'm going to get when I go to visit you as a leader. So I think that authenticity is incredibly important. And I have no trouble whatsoever admitting that I watch reality TV and I watch The Bachelor, right? I love it. Because that's my chill time. You don't have to think if you watch that program, and we all need that time. And I think a lot of people in ANZ know that, and they'll often be texting me, what do you think of the new breed? But, you know, I think being yourself, knowing who you are, not trying to be someone else all the time is important. Now, that doesn't mean if you're a party animal, you can go to a client function and start rolling around drunk. I'm not suggesting that for one moment, but please remain true to yourself when you're in leadership. I think it's important. And I am so lucky that I have a family that is more than happy to bring me down to earth if ever I get an ego. So that is a benefit as well, but certainly don't have that. And the final thing for me is being brave. You know, in a leadership role, you can't always make the decisions that everybody loves. You can't always make the easy decisions. You can't always be liked. And that's hard because we all want to be liked. That's the reality of it. But sometimes you have to make decisions that are for the greater good of all stakeholders as opposed to a group of stakeholders. And I think, in my experience, learning to be upfront about those decisions, communicating why you had to make those decisions again and again and again, as many times as people need you to, is really, really important. You know, one of the very first things I ever had to do is I was a junior manager, and we had decided that we were moving all of our operation functions to Adelaide, actually. And about 800 people were going to lose their jobs, and we needed about 300 to go to Adelaide. And I remember the CEO saying to me, because I wasn't very experienced then, that I will announce this if you like. And I thought, no way. These are my people. I want to do it because I understand the situation. I want to tell them why, explain why, and also that I will move to Adelaide as well, because I thought that was the right thing to do. So that's why I moved there for a couple of years. So I think being brave, making the decisions that are right for all stakeholders, and accepting that it's not always going to mean that you're going to be applauded and loved is really important. So that's my journey. I've loved every single minute of it. Couldn't have done any of it without my devoted husband. He's probably listening through the door right now, so I thought I'd say that really loudly. He has been my rock. He's learned to cook over the last 25 years, which is a bonus as well. You know, but I've enjoyed every moment of being a leader. It's the most fulfilling thing, watching people develop and grow and challenge you and make you better. And that's me. And I know it wasn't 5 minutes, but told you that was going to be my challenge, and you didn't cut me off, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I think I was so excited before you started, Lex, that I did not even have a chance to kind of mention to everybody, welcome all our guests as well. That's the first thing I'm supposed to do as a contest chair and as a president. And in my excitement, I forgot even that. So firstly, a very warm welcome to all the guests, all the contestants for this evening. What a wonderful start we have had for the evening with these beautiful words and amazing 6 lessons that Lex has shared with us. Thank you again, Lex, for sharing that with us. This will go a long way for all of us in our personal journeys as well. But more so, I think it'll be the best message that our contestants could have received today, as they're all nervously and excitedly sitting there to participate in our contests.